State for Education, who was supposed to join us earlier, had some technical difficulties. Before the program is done, he had to go into a meeting. If he's done with his program, he'll be joining us. But up until then, please do let's have your contributions and questions in the chat room. Thank you very, very much. 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 Come on with just a minute of maybe anything else that she has to add to what has already been said here today. Mrs. Bankole? Okay, while we're waiting for Mr. Come on, I'm made to understand that we have other people who will be contributing. Honorable Kevin Uluwashim Gabriel, the Vice Chairman of Apapa Local Government. We're expecting him to join us at some point. We also have Alhaji Usman Liman, the National Secretary of the NUJ, Mrs. Yinka Ogunde, a parent and educator, and also Dr. Olubenga Oyesomi. So any of these contributors, if you're in the chat room, please would like to take your contributions now for no more than a minute, so that we can then open up to other participants in the virtual chat room. In the virtual chat room. Okay, we have the spotlight on a contributor. Good morning, ma'am.
Hi, good morning.
Welcome to.
Hi.
Welcome to.
Hi.
Are you there? We can hear you. Please go ahead. Are you there? We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. We can hear you. Can you go ahead with your contribution, please? Contribution, please. Contribution, please. Contribution, please. The chat room, they said they would like to suggest that the government churches, and they said that I'm quite familiar with, and they said they would like government to make their engage churches to make their large halls available for the virtual learning centers as a way to contribute to their immediate environment. Thank you very, very much, Bimbola, to you for your contributions. Okay, Folake Olumuyiwa in the chat room says they particularly like the emphasis Mr. Ajayi made on the use of data to drive decisions and make changes in the educational sector. Thank you very much. I think that was also a very valid contribution. Of course, Abigail, Mrs. Ajayi was referring to the fact that information should be made available at all levels concerning the children that are being taught, whether they be in virtual learning centers or at home, or just generally that there should be a large amount of information so that students can properly assess the children and all of that. That was a very, very, very valid contribution. Thank you once again, Mrs. Ajayi. We're expecting questions from you, and then we'll also for Mr. Ibidu. We also have somebody in the chat room who talked about, I think it was, yes, Dr. Olubenga Oyesomi, who we're also expecting to join in for about a 1-minute contribution. He said, and Mrs. Ajayi stressed, that parents need to be involved somehow, And he said, students, teachers, and parents team. Thank you very, very much again. Dr. Yesome, please, if you're still with us in the chat room, would like to get your contribution. And then we're expecting others' contributions and questions and the likes to come in. Abigail had a question for Mr. Ibidu Adeleke. Perhaps we can just go ahead with that while we're waiting for participants to contribute.
Thank you very much, Sherry. You know, looking at the setting up of the virtual learning centers, especially for children from government schools, my concern is for students who do not speak fluent English, who have issues with understanding and communicating English. So how would the virtual learning center come in for them? Is there any provision for such children?
Okay, so this question is addressed to Mr. Ibidu Adeleke. Sir, could you please respond? We have a question for you. Mr. Ibidu Adeleke. Okay, we're expecting Mr. Ibidu to join us so that he can take that question. Perhaps there might be some other contributors in the chat room who may wish to address that question. Okay, Mrs. Ajayi, I see Mrs. Ajayi.
Thank you. I like that question. We know that there is a need, and it is our responsibility as the adults and co-learners in the room, in the classroom, whatever kind of classroom, to meet these needs. We call something vague. There are some students that I remember 2 years ago, a child came into my classroom with no word of English. The only language she could speak was Arabic. And I had to teach that child. What did I do? I just needed to start with images. Because I'm a geography teacher, I just gave her a map. Okay, I got a child who could speak English and Arabic to tell her, okay, all I want you to do is start labeling the countries onto this blank map. Something as simple as that actually will make a child feel wanted. It's not every child that speaks English. So what's there for us as teachers? Just give them resources. Do not teach them in the local language. No, please. It's not going to help them. Instead, break down the vocabulary, break down the learning. Use, for example, I had a child who graduated about 3 years ago, yes. And when he got into the school, I learned that he couldn't even say, my name is Andre. But by the time he finished, we could have long conversations in English. That is something that got built over time. So we should not expect some microwave learning from students. We can surmount this challenge. All we need to do is make sure we have the right pedagogy. We have the right strategies in place. I hope that addresses your question, Abigail.
Much, Ma. Thank you so much, Ma. I'm very grateful for that answer. Thank you, Ma. Right now, we'll go straight ahead to open our chat room. The chat room is open. We want to hear your contributions. We want to hear your questions. You could direct your questions to our guest speakers, and we are ready to listen from you. Our chat room is open.
Okay, we are getting some contributions from the chat room. Adetutu says, thank God for joining this meeting, although he stressed that they have been trying since, but the network is bad, and so many people are calling to join, but they couldn't due to the network, and they said to please try help on this network problems. I believe this is a very, very vital aspect. So at some point during the program, we have experienced some of these as well, but for the Adopt a School initiative, we believe that what is going to help stem this issue is partnerships and collaborations with network providers, internet service providers, who will ensure that at every point in time, whether they be virtual learning centers, whether they be schools themselves that have been adopted, that all of these things will be put in place to ensure that there is a smooth learning process for all the children going forward. So again, this is part of what the Adopt to School initiative on all stakeholders from every sector. So when it comes to internet service providers, they have to ensure that whatever centers are set up, whether they be virtual learning centers or even the schools themselves, that they have the adequate they have the adequate level of internet that can power up the learning process for all of them. Another contributor, Joseph Aliyu, stresses this as well. He says, "Good day all. We are talking about virtual learning, and right from this meeting, there are issues with connectivity. I hope we put this into consideration." And by this, he meant the technicalities in setting up virtual learning platforms so as to do it well. Thank you very, very much for your contributions, Adetutu, and also Mr. Joseph Aliyu. We also have a question. Mrs. Adenike Oyelade says, "When will there be teachers training?" I believe that we have somebody in the chat room who will be able to take this on for us. Mrs. Yinka, we understand that you're back here in the chat room. We apologize if there was any miscommunication at some point. I understand that the technicalities made us cut short. We apologize for that. Welcome back, Ma. Please, let's hear your contribution. Welcome, we can see you. Please, let's have your contribution. Welcome, we can see you. Please, let's have your contribution.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and I'm quite delighted to be with you this morning. I've been trying to, the connectivity has been a bit of a challenge and I'm with. But nonetheless, I believe it's a learning experience. It's a learning curve. And we can only get better. Things will certainly get better. And of course, I think we're talking here about the Adopt to School program. And I think as I was listening to the conversation at that time, I actually smiled because the interesting thing for me was that about 17 or 18 years ago, during the tenure of the Commissioner of Education in Lagos State. That was actually something we did back then, Adopt a School. It was a huge program. It brought in a lot of corporate organizations to support the education sector at that time. And we're thankful for the success that during the Dr. Leke administration, because it was actually a project that the government initiated at that time when he was Commissioner for Education. But this one is a very intriguing one because we don't even need physical classrooms. We don't need structures to be on ground. We just need to find a way of raising very, very good teachers that will be able to communicate effectively with the children, that will be able to engage them, that will be able to design things that will make the students to become excited about learning once again. And I hope that corporate Nigeria will embrace this initiative and support everyone concerned. So thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting this morning.
Ma, there is a question here in the chat room. As a concerned parent, which we are aware that you are, there's a question about teachers training in preparation for virtual learning centers and this new normal that we are beginning to see if we're going to have children back in schools. What would your response, Ma, be on teachers training towards this new normal that we are seeing? Would your response, Ma, be on teachers training towards this new normal that we are seeing?
Okay. Hey, thank you for that question.
Now, teachers training towards this new normal. Teachers training towards this new normal. training towards this new normal.
Okay, certainly we have a bit of a problem with connectivity. I believe that's one of the problems. But like I said, we will certainly surmount it. In terms of teachers training, I believe that the bedrock of the success of whatever it is that we are planning is actually the issue of teachers. If we are unable to raise teachers that will understand, will not be successful, because between January, February, and this time, so many things have changed, and it is important that we raise teachers that will understand this dynamic shift. If we're able to raise that, then we will make a success of it. If we're unable to translate our teachers, then it will become more challenging. How do we do that? I think it is important, one, connected with the training of teachers. How do I put it? Do we say that the government should get involved so that there will be a central pool now, and everyone will sort of observe what we are doing? Maybe we need that kind of coordinating body, a body that will be aware of what needs to be done at this time, and they're able to pull it off. We're trying to do that on CPA, but we know that we are limited, because on the Concerned Parents and Educators platform, we actually have a platform that has about 10,670 teachers or something like that, and we're trying to do a lot of work with them. The main group, which is the Concerned Parents and Educators group, the CPE group, we have about 176,000 members, and that gives us deep insight into various problems happening within the sector. And I can tell you that the number one problem is really how to train our teachers. I think we need a lot of coordination in that area, so that we can get this transition to become more effective. Is the way to go, is what the future is dictated. But how do we now raise the teachers so that they will know what needs to be done? We need to train them. We need to retrain them. We need to reprogram our teachers. We need to transform their mindset. We need to ensure they do not resist technology. We need to invite them with a growth mindset, so that we begin to see all the possibilities available with technology. It requires another kind of mind. I believe that if we give them the right kind of training, they can become excited, they can become creative. And that's what programs like this and things that we are all doing can achieve within the sector.
That contribution.
I hope we were able to hear me.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Yes, we did, Mama. I have a question for you. Listening to your contribution, you mentioned the need to focus on the teachers' training. So I want to know, the teachers we have in ground, do we have enough teachers for the task ahead? Do we need more teachers to come in? Is there a provision for volunteer teachers?
We're going to wait for you to come on, but while we wait, let's take a few more contributions. I think some of these are addressed to Mrs. Ajayi specifically. Helen Ochidi asked that she needs a little more explanation on trackers. But before you do that explanation, I believe there's another question here that you could probably help us address. It says, why, from C. Chalia, says, why do students need to get to a physical building for virtual learning? And if they need to get to a physical building, why not strengthen existing government structures? We would have very much liked for the Vice Chairman of Apapa Local Government to respond to this, but since he's not here, could you please help us respond to this while we're waiting for Mrs. Yinka Ogunde to come back on and address the question that Abigail asked. Mrs. Ajayi? Okay, we're going to wait for both Mrs. Yinka and Mrs. Ajayi to come. Okay, I see Mrs. Ajayi. Okay, I see Mrs. Ajayi. Okay, I see Mrs. Ajayi.
Okay, I'll start with the trackers. Could you just let me know if you can hear me, especially Miss Adet or Mr. the person who asked the question. Tracker with, it's just all about names. You are a school proprietor, you are a teacher. You're keeping records of what your students do. You're keeping records of how they are making progress. Progress is not something that is made in one day. It's I remember back then we used to have something called the accumulated results. We have first term, second term, and at the end of the third term, your result is prorated. It's something like that. So right from year one, you're keeping a record for each child, and not just record. You're looking at the things. What were the things that the child found difficult? What things did a child do well? I know it's a lot of work. It's something we scream about here, that it's increasing teacher workload, but it's what actually drives what you do. It's what drives your planning. As a teacher, if you do not track what you're doing with students, if you do not track your student progress as well as your own progress, because it's not just the students that are learning from you, you are learning. We call that reflective learning. So it's sine qua non. If you don't track it, there is no way you'll make progress as a teacher. There's no way your students will make progress, and this in turn gets back into the school. There is no way your school will make the required progress. Your school will not be one of the schools where everybody wants to send their child. So that's what tracker or tracking is all about. You could start with maybe a diary. It doesn't have to be online, because every time we talk, people will say, no, computer based. Yes, the computer makes it easier, especially if you're using Excel. Excel, it could be Word, it could be Google, any one of the data recognizing applications. You could use that, but in the interim, you could start with just an onward exercise book. So I hope that addressed that question. And the second thing, existing structures. I don't know, we really do not need new buildings, except the existing building is not meet for the purpose. For example, a classroom that ideally will hold 30 students in this unprecedented times would not be able to hold more than 10, because we need to create bubbles. So if you have more than enough space in the school, yes, but if the school doesn't have the capacity, then we might need to spread out to get help from the community, from other organizations. But we can start with the resources we have in your building. Create bubbles. When we call it bubbles here in the UK, by the way, in this class we have 10 students. Those 10 students will not interact with kids from another room. So there is that where we're trying to minimize the risk of the virus being transmitted onto other children. So within those 10 children, we know that they will not interface with other students. So if there's any outbreak, we can quickly checkmate it. We can quickly attend to it, address it without having a larger outbreak, which will become a problem. So that's one key thing to the success of the virtual learning classroom. I saw somebody in the chat room say, wow, virtual classroom, no physical teacher, I know this. you can have a teacher there. You could actually teach without the internet where there are challenges. Yes, quote and unquote me. If you're in a community where there is a problem with data, there's a problem with internet, there's a problem with kids accessing the computer, you could use a projector. You could have a hard drive. You have the lesson prepared ahead, and this is played to them. It's not their regular teacher, but it's a lesson which, for example, I remember during the virtual learning that we did over 5 months, we would teach students. We would record our virtual classrooms and upload it to the portal so that students who missed the lesson can actually
not hearing what this woman is saying.
Listen to the explanation.
Okay, increase it.
Listen to the explanation. Listen to the words of a teacher.
I'm sorry, ma'am. There's a bit of a delay, but we hear your contributions. If you could please just wrap up in about a minute. We have the Minister of State for Education on with us now. We've been expecting him and he's here now. You can go ahead, man. Just wrap up. Thank you very much.
We can have virtual learning without necessarily having internet at that point in time. And we can work within the structures that we have. That's just it. That's it. Any further question, you can get in touch with me via the host.
Now, we'd like to have the Minister of State for Education. Welcome, Honorable Chuka Mekanwajuba. It's good to have you here with us in the chat room, sir.
I'm a little bit, I'm sorry, because I was in a meeting with the UNICEF while the program was going on, and I didn't want to keep budging in and out. But thank you for having me. I hear what a lot of our panelists are saying, and some of our children and everybody who is on board. We think we should continue to listen and hear and work out steps as to how we can make the education ecosystem something that works for everybody. All your suggestions, and I'm sure the minutes of the meeting, because it's Zoom, will then be communicated to us so that we can then take an in-depth look at the advices that have been given. But like I told you when we met over this matter, I think it is important that all of us continue to see it as a joint effort, not just from the Ministry of Education. We think all of us are
All right. Thank you very, very much, sir. We got a little bit of what you said. Thank you. We believe, sir, that there will be some questions for you from some of our participants in the chat room. So I'm just going to take out a few of the questions and contributions that we have here, and then see maybe if there are any one or two that you could address. All right, so Mr. Salam Adeyemi asked the question in the chat room. He says the fact that a greater percentage of students in public schools come from disadvantaged backgrounds, when you consider that, how easy will it be for these children to participate in our blended learning or the virtual centers which are being proposed today as part of the Adopt a School program? So that's one of the contributions that we have in the chat room. We also have a few more people who have asked a couple of questions as well. We'll just take them here and then start if there are any that you could respond to. For us, please, very much, sir. For us, we would very, very much like that you do that. Thank you very much, sir. Like that.
Okay. Yes, hello. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, ma, we can hear
Please,
you.
could you
Hello, ma, are you there?
Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear you? Can you hear me?
Seem to be, I'm sorry, I seem to be hearing both at the same time. Please, if any of you can hear us, would like to take your contributions or your responses to the questions. Thank you. As well as Mrs. Bankole, we understand you have questions as well. Please go ahead with your questions. As well as Mrs. Bankole, we understand. Please go ahead with your questions.
Hello, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I just was able to come in. I had a challenge with my internet. I just uploaded credit, so I don't know what was asked or what I'm to do now.
The Honorable Minister of Education is, the Honorable Minister of State for Education, Honorable Majuba, is here with us. So, being an educator yourself and the owner of a school, we thought maybe you might have a few questions for him. He just joined us as well, and he's here with us for at least this duration. So please, let's ask all the questions that we have. Also in the chat room, they have questions for him as well. But let's hear from you, and then after you, Mrs. Yinka Ogunde, will come back to you. And then after you, Mrs. Yinka Ogunde, will come back to you, ma. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And good afternoon to everyone once again. The basic question I want to ask is, or a plea, maybe not even a question, but a plea really, that we have our education system giving the pride of place it should actually hold, in the sense that we know that no country develops beyond the level and quality of its education system. It seems to a lot of us that not much value or premium is placed on education in Nigeria. That's the way we feel. We may be wrong. You can explain why things are like that. Reason is, we looked at how it is now. Schools, the first phase of resumption had kicked off. So looking at the reason we are here of the public schools, and we know that is so not so, and I know that's why private schools that were ready could not even open all this while, even though we were willing that, okay, continue, or by the time the face-to-face classes resume as it has started this week, blended learning. We know that if any other thing happens after now, public school will still be held back and held down. And that is going to affect the private school again. What is the Ministry of Education doing to make sure that we don't get into this kind of problem going forward? In other words, how is the Ministry of Education helping to put a condition enough that if they need to learn at home, they can learn at home as it places? If they also need to have to come back to school like what we are facing, their schools will be safe enough for them to resume? That's my question, sir.
The Honorable Minister is here. He will react to your contribution now.
Question now, or do we wait a question? Can I ask the question you right now, or do we wait for? Can I respond to this question now? Right now, or do we wait for to this question?
With your question so that the minister can respond to all of them at once. Thank you, ma'am.
Quickly, put one or two things in there so that they have to all those things together. Learning now, and what comes to mind are the challenges that we all face concerning it. One, the issue of the teachers, and then the issue of data. Whether we like it or not, we need to address the high cost of data services. I want to ask if the Honorable Commissioner can put together something within the Ministry of Education that can make a special appeal to the telcos, because I know they are also in business and they're having quite a challenge coping with the upsurge at the moment. But we need to make
Look.